Very, very welcome to you, Swamiji. I now invite Aditi and Namrata ji Agarwala to please welcome Swamiji with the traditional Purna Kumbh.
ॐ न कर्मणा न प्रजया धनेन त्यागेनैके अमृतत्वमानशु परेण नाकं निहितं गुहायां विभ्राजते तद्यतयो विशन्ति वेदान्तविज्ञानसुनिश्चिताथा सन्न्यासयोगाद्यतियच्युद्धसत्त्वाः ते ब्रह्मलोके तु परान्तकाले परामृतात् परिमुच्यन्ति सर्वे दहरं विपापं परमेश्वभूतं यत्पुण्डरीकं पुरमध्य संगस्थं तत्रापि दहरं गगनं विशोकस्तस्मिन् यदन्तस्तदुपासितव्यम् यो वेदादौ स्वरप्रोक्तो वेदान्ते च प्रतिष्ठितः तस्य प्रकृतिलीनस्य यः परः स महेश्वरः। बोलिए सद्गुरुनाथ महाराज की जय।
Thank you. We now begin the proceedings with the invocation prayers and the Guru Stotram that will be chanted by Ramaji Tantia and Meenalji Roopchand, both from Vinita Ji's classes.
सहनावतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं कर्वावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। अखण्डमण्डलाकारं व्याप्तं येन चराचरं तत्पदं दर्शितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वर गुरुर् साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः।
स्थावरं जंगमं व्याप्तं यत्किंचित् सचराचरं तत्पदं दर्शितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। चिन्मयं व्यापि यत् सर्वं त्रैलोक्यं सचराचरं तत्पदं दर्शितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। सर्वश्रुतिशिरोरत्न विराजितपदाम्बुजः वेदान्ताम्बुजसूर्यो यः तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। चैतन्य शाश्वत शान्तो व्योमातीतो निरञ्जनः बिन्दुनादकलातीतः तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। ज्ञानशक्ति समारूढ़ः तत्वमाला विभूषितः भुक्तिमुक्ति प्रदाता च तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। अनेक जन्म संप्राप्त कर्म बंध विदाहिने आत्मज्ञान प्रदानेन तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। शोषरं भवसिन्धोश्च ज्ञापनं सारसम्पदः गुरुः पादोदकं सम्यक् तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। न गुरोरधिकं तत्त्वं न गुरोरधिकं तपः तत्त्वज्ञानात् परं नास्ति तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। मन्नाथ श्री जगन्नाथ मद्गुरु श्री सद्गुरु मदात्मा सर्वभूतात्मा तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। गुरोरादिर्नादिश्च गुरुः परमदैवतं गुरुः परतरं नास्ति तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। त्वमेव माता च पिता त्वमेव बन्धुश्च सखा त्वमेव विद्या द्रविणं त्वमेव सर्वं मम देव त्वमेव सर्वं मम देव
Thank you, Meenalji. Before we begin, I'd like to take this opportunity to express our heartfelt gratitude to Pujya Swamiji for taking the time out to visit our study classes. This indeed goes a long way in keeping us inspired and keeping our thirst for spiritual knowledge alive. Of course, Swamiji needs no introduction. I'm sure each and every one of us here has benefited immensely from his talks, sessions, satsangs that he's had throughout this stressful pandemic period that has helped to keep us strong, keep us rooted, keep us afloat. So thank you for that as well, Swamiji. We at Chinmay Sagar Zone are indeed blessed that we've had Swamiji as our teacher, our inspiration, our mentor, our guiding light for almost 20 years now. Currently, Swamiji leads all the 8 zones of Chinmay Mission, Mumbai. Swamiji, today's satsang has been hosted by 3 classes of Sevika Vinita Ji Asrani and 2 classes of Sevika Aditi Ji Agarwala. And the topic that we've chosen to gain clarity on is what is the place of Sagun Bhakti, that is ritualism especially, in Advait Vedant, given that its thrust is that Brahman, the nameless, formless, alone exists. To put it simply, Swamiji, we are all at different levels of understanding, different levels and stages of our spiritual studies. But still, there comes a point that this question does pop up. That why should I go through this entire drill of surrender, rituals, puja, bhakti, when the ultimate learning is that the Lord and I are one? So without further delay, I request Swamiji to please take over and untie these knots in our understanding. Over to you, Swamiji.
Om Shri Tapovana Paramagurave Namaha. Om Shri Chinmay Sadgurave Namaha. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Om Samastagana Kalyane Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadgurum Brahmadiswaram. Hari Om, and my salutations to one and all. So congratulations to Vinita ji also, Aditi ji also, for continuously keeping the classes inspired for so many years and for studying. Is my audio clearer?
Is it clearer now?
Yeah, yes, Swamiji, this is much better.
So I was saying congratulations to Vinita ji and Aditi ji for continuously keeping the classes inspired and also for ensuring new people continue to get inspired, existing people are retained in the classes and study and gain more and more depth. and more of you also become sevaks and sevikas. Which are the texts that you have completed so far? All the 5 classes? If you can briefly just let me know.
Swamiji, in my Monday morning class, we are studying the Bhagavatam, Guruji's Bhagavatam, after completing all the 18 chapters of the Gita and also doing a few Upanishads. We thought that studying Guruji's Bhagavatam will be helping to bind us with Bhakti also, and not just plain Vedanta.
Right.
Monday evening, also we are doing the Bhagavatam after completing the same 18 chapters of the Gita and also about 5 Upanishads. And yes, Swamiji. And Thursday morning, we are on the 15th chapter of the Gita.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Aditi ji?
Tuesday, Swamiji, I'm doing Tuesday class. We are doing chapter 4 of Bhagavad Gita. And the Wednesday class, I'm doing chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita.
Okay. You are unmanifest like Brahman right now.
Because
You can sit in front if you want.
we are on the other, this thing. This is spotlighted on, this was supposed to be spotlighted, but I've become the host on the other.
Okay,
I have
okay.
2 computers on, so I'm not being able to manage.
No problem. Okay.
Technically still challenged, Swamiji.
No issue. All right. So most of the classes have done quite a bit of the text. I'm going to start with a quiz, okay? It's like a questionnaire. And you have to answer in yes or no. Each one has to answer for themselves. I'm not asking one person to answer one question, but you have to answer. This is like a self-evaluation. You know, they give in generally a lot of this psychometric tests and all that. So this is spirituometric test. So there are 25 questions. You have to answer them in yes or no. What you have to do is write the question number and then answer yes or no. You can just write Y and N also if you want. Do it on your phone or notepad or whatever it is. So here it comes. Okay, wait. Can you see?
Yes.
Okay. So answer. Yes or no. Done? These 8 are over?
Yes, Swamiji, over.
Yes. Yes. Sir.
Yes, Swamiji.
Okay. Done?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Done?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes,
So we
Master.
go to the evaluation. What you need to do is for each of them, I'm going to tell you the answer, okay, here, and what it means. So you create a column, you create two columns. One column is called DNR, don't need rituals. Another column is called NR, need rituals. Okay. Do you think of yourself as Brahman? If your answer is yes, then tick mark in DNR. You don't need ritual. Do you see everything as expression of Brahman? If answer is yes, DNR. The person whom you dislike the most, do you see them as Brahman? If answer is yes, DNR. Opposite also is true, okay? That if answer is no, put the tick in NR. I'm not saying that. Whichever I say opposite, if it is your answer, then you put the tick in the opposite column, right? Do you think you are the body? If your answer is yes, you have to tick in NR. Do you have a strong sense of individuality? If your answer is yes, tick in NR. Do you feel emotions are more important than thoughts? If your answer is yes, tick in NR. Do emotions overpower you sometimes? If answer is yes, tick in NR. Do you feel the need for belonging to someone and for someone to belong to you? The answer is yes, tick in NR. Does your mind focus well on Mahavakya or pointers to Brahman in contemplation? If answer is yes, tick in DNR. Does your mind wander a lot in contemplation? If answer is yes, tick in NR. Does Brahman invoke emotions in you when you contemplate? If answer is yes, tick in DNR. When you are in trouble or pain, do you think of Brahman? If answer is yes, tick in DNR. Do you think of Brahman means you think you are Brahman and you are beyond pain and pleasure? Okay, that's the meaning. When you feel happy, do you think it's an illusion? If answer is yes, tick in DNR. Does the world appear real to you? If answer is yes, tick in NR. Do pairs of opposites affect you? If answer is yes, tick in NR. Do you get anxious about results of your actions? If answer is yes, tick in NR. Do your body, mind, intellect, do you feel your body, mind, intellect are aligned very well to each other? If answer is yes, tick in DNR. Do you look forward to contemplation consistently? Meaning that you don't have to push your mind. Very eagerly you would look forward to contemplation every day. If answer is yes, tick DNR. Do you feel you have controlled the senses? If answer is yes, tick DNR. Is your mind engaging in fanciful projections of happiness on objects, people, and situations? Do you think that when I go here, I will become happy? If I eat that, I will become happy? If answer is yes, tick DNR. Tick NR, sorry. If answer is yes, tick NR. Do you perceive duality as real? If answer is yes, tick NR. Do you remain equanimous at all times? If answer is yes, tick DNR. Do comments of people about you or your life affect you? If answer is yes, tick NR. In and through all your actions through the day, are you able to remember that you are Brahman? If answer is yes, tick DNR. Do you celebrate birthdays, anniversaries, success, etc.? If answer is yes, tick NR. Now, count. Is your DNR more or NR more? So tell me how many of you, for you, the DNR is more. Do not need ritual is more. You can type in the chat. Nobody? Okay, do one thing. It is, if you can and if you want to, voluntarily, type your score. DNR out of 25, DNR 5, NR 20, whatever. Type. Wow, see, Sarita ji has DNR more. Oh, she does not need ritual. Excellent. NR, not NE. NR, DNR. DNR is more. 14. Need ritual is 11. Okay. Anybody else? No, if you just write 12, we don't know what it is, Snehaji. It is a DNR, NR, what is it? DNR 8, NR 11. What happened to the rest? 6. Arey, you have to answer for all 25. Huh? There is no between option. कि neither yes nor no, मतलब कहीं पे भी टिक नहीं किया. सोनिया जी DNR 14, NR 11. अरे बहुत सारे ज्ञानी लोग हैं यहाँ पे तो. Most of them have DNR only, don't need ritual. Excellent. क्या बात है. NR 14. अरे आप 14 and 9 is only 23. Ramaji, what happened to other two? 25 चाहिए ना 25. Anyway, the point was, this is a way to understand whether I need or I don't need. See, first and foremost, why Sagun Bhakti is required in Vedanta. Our nature is pure consciousness as Brahman. There is no doubt in that. But do we feel that? We don't feel, many times we feel we live as Jiva only. And we have come to Vedant straight away. Many times we have not done the preparation required. What is the preparation? So if I am Brahman and the knowledge is being given to me that I am Brahman, still if I am not realizing, what are the obstacles? 3 main obstacles are said in Vedanta. Mala, these are 6 impurities of the mind. Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsarya. That is the first obstacle. Second obstacle is Vikshepa, wandering of the mind. The mind doesn't stay focused. Third is Avarana. I don't know who am I. So I am thinking I am the BMI. That is called ignorance or veiling. So these 3 are the obstacles to self-realization. Now, what does the Vedanta Shastra say? To overcome Mala, impurities of the mind, one has to engage in Karma Yoga. And Karma Yoga will transform Kama into Nishkama, selfishness into selflessness. How will it transform selfishness into selflessness? When we dedicate our actions to the Supreme Lord. Ishwararpitam nechaya kritam chitta shodhakam mukti sadhakam. When we dedicate the actions to the Supreme Lord, then it is possible for us to transform from selfish to selfless actions. Now we may say, why not dedicate it to my family, to my country, to my company, to my culture, etc. One can do that, but that will not remove our Jiva Bhav, it will not invoke surrender. Only temporarily our mind may feel inspired by the cause because we have love for it. But again, we will come back to ego. But when we dedicate all actions to Bhagwan, we say, I am not the Karta, I am not the Bhokta. Bhagwan, you are the Karta, you are the Bhokta. All duties I dedicate unto you. That Karma Yoga purifies the mind of the 6 impurities, because the first one, Kama, is the cause of the other 5. Selfishness, when it is fulfilled, it will lead to greed, it will lead to intoxication. When it is not fulfilled, it will lead to anger, it will lead to jealousy, it will lead to anger and jealousy. When it is fulfilled, it leads to greed, intoxication, and delusion, moha. So the cause of all the 6 is the first one, Kama. So Kama becomes Nishkama only through Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga is not possible unless we dedicate to Bhagwan. Dedication to Bhagwan is not possible unless we have a relationship with Bhagwan. Think about it. Can you love something without any relationship? Give me one example of human emotion being directed towards a being without any relationship at all. Don't say, I love chocolate, but I have no relationship with chocolate. That's an inert thing. With any person, when we love them, we want a connection with them. We want a bond. We want a relationship. The more the relationship is, and we want to give it a name. Nowadays, people want to have relationship without giving it any name, and they call it friends with benefits and this and that, all kinds of things happening in the world. But after some time, they want a name. It's just initial phase where they feel no commitments, no this thing, and we are all free birds and we can be with each other, but we are no commitment, no binding. After some time, they'll come to that. What is my relationship with you? Because there's a deep need in us to feel the belonging to someone and for someone to belong to us. So without a relationship with the Lord, it is not possible to have the bhavana. The feeling cannot come without a relationship. Whether you give it a name or not, and you live in a denial mode, that's a different matter. But feeling comes only when there is a relationship, and for that relationship, a form is necessary. Without a form, it becomes very difficult to have relationship with the infinite. And without that, Karma Yoga is not possible. So look at so many great devotees. Vedantic devotees I'm talking about. Hanumanji was a Vedantic master. He was a Vedantic, he is a Vedantic master. When Bhagavan Ram asked him, what is my relationship with you? He said, at the body level, I am your servant, you are my master. At the individuality level, I am a part, you are the whole. But at the spiritual level, you and I are one. So he's a Vedantic master who has realized oneness with the Lord, but still there is a relationship which is there with the Lord. Then look at Adi Shankaracharya ji, greatest Advaitic master. Did he not worship Lord Shiva? Continuously he worshipped Lord Shiva. His Ishta is Lord Shiva. He himself is avatar of Lord Shiva, is what many consider. Ramakrishna Paramhamsa, did he not worship Mother Kali? And did he not realize absolute Brahman? And even after realizing Brahman, did he not worship Kali? Think about that. Totapuri Maharaj was the guru of Ramakrishna Paramhamsa, who never believed in form, who lived only in contemplation on formless absolute Brahman. That great master, after initiating Ramakrishna Paramhamsa into the formless, and Ramakrishna transcended the form of Mother Kali and realized absolute oneness with the Supreme Consciousness, that Totapuri Maharaj, when he became sick, he requested Ramakrishna, initiate me into bhakti because I am not able to come out of this body identification. So Ramakrishna initiates him into Saguna Bhakti of Mother Kali. Think about that. So Karma Yoga itself is not possible without Saguna Bhakti. So how will the impurity of the mind go? Without having a relationship with Bhagavan and without having emotions directed towards the Lord in that relationship. Now there are methods to direct the emotion. That is a different matter. I will come to that later about rituals. Puja, etc. Rituals are one way to direct. But I will come to that second part of the talk. First part, we are exploring these three obstacles. So Mala, to remove Mala itself, I need Saguna Bhakti. Without removing Mala, it is not possible to realize Brahman. Second, Vikshepa, wandering of the mind. Now, why does the mind wander? Mind wanders because the senses are extrovert and the mind thinks happiness is in the world outside. So the mind loves those objects, people, situations, and so it runs behind them. And while engaging in those, does anybody have to tell the mind, concentrate? If you are eating rasgulla, does anybody have to tell you, you love sweets and you are eating rasgulla, does anybody have to tell you, concentrate on rasgulla? Eat properly. Don't let your mind wander. Enjoy the taste. Feel the softness of the rasgulla. Nothing. One just enjoys it, and one even closes the eyes and aha, as though one is in Brahmananda ekdam. Why? Because where there is love, there is concentration. Simple. But right now the love is for objects. So the concentration is in the objects. So whether I watch a movie, I watch some cricket, or I listen to some nice song, or I eat some good food, or I'm playing some sport that I love, or doing some hobby that I love, mind focuses easily. Why? Because there is love. Now, when I want the mind to focus in contemplation, I have to invoke love. Again, love cannot come without bhavana, without feeling, without relationship. So what is my relationship with Bhagavan? I have to ask. With Ishvara. And please remember that Ishvara is Saguna Brahman. Is not something else. If we think that that Ishvara is separate and we are to Vedantic students who are only seekers of Brahman, why do we have to worship this Ishvara? Is that Ishvara some other person, some other entity? That Ishvara is Brahman only. Brahman plus Maya is equal to Ishvara. So why do we think that Vedanta excludes Bhakti? Vedanta does not exclude Bhakti at all. And neither Bhakti excludes Vedanta. So when we understand this, that Saguna Brahman is called Ishvara. When Bhagwan manifests in a form, then that is called Ishvara. And who is that form? That absolute formless. That one Brahman which can appear as the whole universe, why cannot that one Brahman appear as the world, as the form? Now, if we are Vedantic students and if we say Brahman alone is all this, Brahman using the power of Maya is appearing as all this. So Maya is making the changeless appear as the changing, infinite appear as the finite. That is a play of Maya, trick of Maya. So if that Maya can make that Brahman appear as the whole world, using that same Maya, why cannot Brahman take a form? That also is a part of Vedanta only. So Upasana is the method for removing Vikshepa. Karma Yoga is the method for removing Mala. Upasana is the method for removing Vikshepa, wandering of the mind. So if my mind is wandering, the reason is I have not engaged my emotion in that. My emotion is for something else. Intellectually, I know I am Brahman. I am contemplating Aham Brahmasmi, Aham Brahmasmi, Aham Brahmasmi. But the mind has gone to something else only. It is still in some pav bhaji, some pizza and some movie and some Netflix series and something it is going on thinking. But I am Brahman. Because love is not there. Bhavana is not there. Many of you have studied the Upanishads. Upasana is a part of Upanishad or not? Most of the Upanishads have Upasanas. What is meaning of Upasana? Taking a support system and invoking surrender and making the mind single pointed through that support system is Upasana. Many things are taken as support, not just the form of the Lord. Lightning, in Kenopanishad, lightning is an Upasana. In the Mundakopanishad, you find Omkar Upasana is there. In the Taittiriya Upanishad, there is the Upasana of Panchakoshas. So that we learn to negate these 5 koshas. Different Upanishads have different Upasanas. In Kaivalya Upanishad, form is there. Uma Sahayam Parameshwaram Prabhum Trilochanam Nilakantham Prashantam Dhyatva Munir Gacchati Bhutayonim is there in the Kaivalya Upanishad. Worship of the form. So it is not that Vedanta does not include Saguna Bhakti at all. Vedanta of course includes Saguna Bhakti. Because without that it is impossible to realize Brahman. Because Brahman is not some abstract concept out there somewhere. Or some inert consciousness. As some power, where people think God is power. God is energy. How is God energy and how is God power? Because energy and power are changeable. Potential energy, kinetic energy, they will change. Energy is Jadavastu, it is inert. Energy doesn't know anything. God is not energy, please. God is not power. God is consciousness because of whom everything else functions. That is Brahman. So, and though that is my true nature, who is that my? That my is not Jiva. That my is Brahman only. Brahman's nature is Brahman. If I am thinking of myself as a Jiva right now, then I have to surrender that Jiva Bhav. Whether I use pointers of Brahman or I use a form of Saguna Brahman, doesn't matter. One is Nirguna Brahman, other is Saguna Brahman, but both are Brahman only. And please don't think one is greater and other is lower. All these are very immature thoughts to have. Somebody thinks, oh, these people are all Saguna Brahma Pujaris, they are just worshipping form. We are not idol worshippers, we are superior. Very good. Every day you spend half an hour in the bathroom cleaning this murti. That is not idol worship. Apply all kinds of scent and shampoo and conditioner and phalana and dhikna. This is not idol worship. This is idol only, na? Murti. Murta means what? What is manifest is called murta. Amurta is that which is unmanifest. So if I think I am this form, and then I say, no, I am not idol worshipper. Are you are worshipping, this is the idol. Are we not eating food? Are we not thinking, if one gray hair comes, I'm becoming old? That is murti only. Murti puja only. What else it is? Are we not celebrating birthdays and all that? And we'll send messages also to people. Today is my 50th birthday, is my special occasion. Can you please come join my party? I'm throwing a party. Very good. Whose 50th birthday? Please ask as a Vedantin. Brahman is 50 years old. Brahman cannot be 50 years old. Jiva is 50 years old. Arey no, Jiva is to Anadi. From how many beginningless time the Jiva has taken innumerable bodies. So who is 50-year-old? That is Swamiji. I am 50-year-old. Who? This body is 50 years old. That is not a ritual to celebrate the 50 years of this bundle of dirt and call all other bundles of dirt, and together all bundles of dirt, exchange bundles of dirt with each other, cut bundle of dirt and give bundle of dirt to another and celebrate. What is that? 50th anniversary, 50th birthday celebration of a bundle of dirt. Very good. But I am not an idol worshipper. I don't believe in rituals. I am a Vedantin. Vah re vah. Just think about it. If we say I am Brahman and I don't want to do any Murti Puja, then I should not do any of this. No ritual, no body identification means this. Because this body is Jadavastu. And I am worshipping this body, but I don't want to worship Ishvara. Vah re vah. How this Maya can trap us, you know. This is called Jnana, the trapping of Jnana. How intellectual knowledge traps us is amazing. It does not allow the ego to surrender. Knowledge is that which actually brings surrender. Vidya dadati vinayam. And if my knowledge keeps me away from Bhagwan, then that knowledge has some serious defect. In the sense, the knowledge doesn't have my understanding as serious defect. So upasana has to be done. A person who has done karma yoga, who has mastered the 6 vikaras, who has purified the mind, who has done upasana consistently for a long period of time, so that jiva bhava is reduced, and one feels, you know, if somebody insults, one doesn't take it personally at all. Then I'm ready for contemplation. 50th birthday, somebody doesn't give me gift, I am very hurt by that. Swamiji, all the functions of theirs I've sent, and such costly gifts, you know, I written down also. For this function, I sent a gift of 2,000 rupees. For that marriage, I gave 5,000 rupees. For this, I gave this much. We keep accounts of all that. In whose marriage, how much money we gave and how much did they return. So next time we have to do vyavhar accordingly. All that I wrote down, Swamiji. My 50th birthday, you know, they didn't give. If my ego is feeling hurt, then what Brahman contemplation am I going to do? I definitely need Saguna Bhakti to surrender my ego. You know, one disciple was there, and the disciple, he went to, his teacher sent him to another monastery to learn. The Zen student, okay. So this person went. He went to that other monastery, and after first month got over, he wrote, I am feeling so good, and my mind is expanding. I'm feeling very light. I'm feeling so happy. The master read that letter, tore it and threw it away. Then after another 2 months, the disciple sent another letter informing about the progress, that right now in last 2 months, I've learned new methods of meditation and I feel so amazing. I feel that I have become one with everybody. I have conquered hunger. I conquered thirst. I conquered sleep. I don't feel any of this anymore. Master read, tore it, threw it away. After another 4 months, the disciple sent one more letter saying that I think I have realized Zen. I have realized the truth. And I experienced that the truth in me is the truth in even the inert thing, the stone, in the ant, in the tree. There is one Zen that pervades everything. Master tore the letter, threw it away. Then for 1 month, for 1 year, there was no letter. So finally, the master sent a message to that other master teacher saying, tell him to send a letter. And the letter came. You know what was written in that? Who cares? Then the master was very happy. The letter said only who cares. Why was the master very happy? When a person realizes the truth, one realizes this whole individuality was a bluff. It was a myth. It never existed. What about its progress? What to talk about its progress? That whole entity only was a myth. When a person who wakes up from the dream, will that person anymore care for the dream character? Nothing one will care for. So if I feel somebody hurt me, oh, they should not have spoken like that about me, that means my individuality is strong. And my mind is getting disturbed by that. That means the world is real, that opposite person's thinking about me, I give so much value to it. In Vedanta, we don't give value to our own thinking about ourselves, because that's a mithya. What we try to do after studying Vedanta is, oh, world is illusion, but my thoughts are real. Wow. How, again, that's another hypocrisy, in our own mind. My anger is real, my happiness is real, my compassion is real, my service is real, but everything else outside, that is an illusion. Correct. These are all gaps in the understanding. So now, if I have this strong sense of individuality, I need upasana. Which upasana to choose depends on my temperament. Our culture doesn't say everybody has to do only puja. Sagun Sakar is one method, Sagun Nirakar is one method, and Nirgun Nirakar is another method. 3. So I will come to these 3. So Mala goes by Karma Yoga, Vikshepa goes by Upasana. With such a mind, when I come to study Vedanta from a teacher who is established in the truth, well versed in the scriptures, and I listen to the Mahavakya, Shravanam I do. If I am extremely purified and Uttam Adhikari, I will realize then and there, instantly. If I am not yet at that level of the Uttam Adhikari like Nachiketa, then I need to do reflection. Mananam I have to do. Clear all the wrong notions. And then I have to do Nididhyasan also. Contemplate on the absolute truth. That contemplation is Nirgun Nirakar. That is called Nididhyasan, where we use pointers of the self to contemplate on Brahman. At the same time, we reject who we are. So Viparita Bhavana, the feeling that I am the body or I am the jiva, is very strong even after studying Vedanta. So Nididhyasan is to remove this Viparita Bhavana and to engage in establishment in the self. That is called Nididhyasana. Sajatiya Vritti Pravaha. Advitiya Vastuni Sajatiya Vritti Pravaha is called Nididhyasana. Towards the non-dual Brahman, steady flow of thoughts without any wandering is called Nididhyasana. So that is Nirgun Nirakar Nididhyasana. Now we have two aspects. If I am not able to do Nirgun Nirakar Nididhyasana, then I have either Sagun Sakar or Sagun Nirakar. Only two options. Worship with the form and with qualities. That is, worship the Lord with form and with qualities. Or worship the Lord without form but qualities. Sagun Nirakar. Now, Sagun Nirakar means what? Omkar Upasana. Please remember, Omkar does not have a form. The very fact that human beings have given a form to Omkar means human being needs a form. If I am doing Omkar Upasana, I have to only focus on the sound, and just focusing on the sound, my mind should think about Brahman. That this Omkar is that Nirgun, Sagun Nirakar Brahma, and that is my true nature. Again, Upanishads give all this. I am not saying any of this is there in Puranas by itself. Puranas also have all this, but these are Upanishadic points which Puranas have also taken. Omkar Upasana is there in Kathopanishad, it is there in Mundakopanishad, it is there in Mandukya Upanishad, it is there in Taittiriya Upanishad. So many Upanishads, Sagun Nirakar. Just focus on the sound. And very difficult it is to focus only on sound, because again the challenge is emotions don't get anchored there. If I still feel I am a jiva and emotions are strong, I need Sagun Sakar. Think about it. Omkar can help me to quieten the mind for some time. So I may have some peace of mind for some time. But surrender, thinking of sound as God, is not easy. And then to think of that sound as representing the infinite consciousness, which is me, very challenging. So if I am ready for Nirgun Nirakar Nididhyasana, go ahead. And please remember that Nirgun Nirakar Nididhyasana also is a ritual. Please remember that. Ritual does not mean only a puja part. Ritual means a process. It's as simple as that. A process means a ritual. That's all. No? What is? We have limited the word ritual to only puja part, and then we want to think that, oh, this puja part is ritual, so I'm not ritualistic. But everything is a ritual in life or not? Morning you wake up and brush the teeth. Is it a ritual or not? People have no morning ritual you should fix, evening ritual you should fix. So they have. So early morning wake up, then brush the teeth, drink 2 glasses of warm water, and all that they will say, no, morning ritual. You know, I drink water with chia seeds and lemon and honey, and it helps to lose weight. That's a ritual only, no? That they told you, the dietitian has told you. That after workout you should take protein. So I take a smoothie, and before eating any other food, I should not mix fruit and I should not mix cereal. Fruit should be eaten on empty stomach. Is all this not ritual? Think about it. Everything is a ritual. Sleep also, if I have to sleep, I sleep at a specific time. If I follow ritual, body will be functioning beautifully. It is a training for body, mind, intellect, and disciplining of the body, mind, and intellect. So if we think that ritual is only puja part and then we look down upon it just because it is fashionable, we are deluded actually. And you know why this has come into our head? Because all the stupid people who want to destroy our culture in some ways have put it into our head. because they have condemned rites, rituals, they have condemned idol worship, etc. Either because they feel it is not required in their thinking, or because some religions don't have it and they condemn all those who have it, or the so-called intellectuals and the woke people, they think all this is created by certain Brahmins to exploit people. Exploitation is there everywhere, and there is no justification for exploitation anywhere. Wherever there is exploitation, that practice of exploitation has to be condemned, not the practice by itself. Think about it. If a Brahman is exploiting you for doing a puja, we should not go for the, we should not fall for that exploitation, but we should not stop doing the puja. Think about it. If there is corruption in education system, will you stop sending children to school, or will you find a school which is not corrupt and send there? So there is no justification for any of this. And if some people think that idol worship is primitive, I'm telling you, most of the native cultures across the world have had idol worships, and they have worshipped so beautifully, and their cultures are so deep, accommodative and accepting. These people who have come in the last few 100 years and 1000 years, they are the people creating all nakhras. Because they had fights for idols and they have destroyed their idols. So now they want the idols across the world to be destroyed. Let them have their ideology for themselves. Why impose it on somebody else? Beautifully, our culture, so many great people have worshipped the idols, and people have had darshan of Bhagwan in that form. That depth of spiritual science is not even understood by some of these people who talk on the top of their head, and we repeat what they say in the name of being modern, liberal and secular and whatnot. So we should ask ourselves, why do I have this aversion towards an idol or a ritual? When I think of this itself is a murti, I interact with everybody who has a form. For me to connect with the unmanifest and formless is not so easy. Then why am I resisting a murti or a ritual? Think about it. When everywhere else I am following a ritual, whether it's in food, whether it's in exercise, whether it's at work, whether it is in my celebrations, whether it is in going for parties, everywhere there's rituals. Including in drinking alcohol, they have rituals. They have prescribed processes or not. What is that called? Tequila shot you have to have with lime, then it is enhanced. Is a ritual or not? So everywhere else ritual I am happily accepting and following, but when it comes to spiritual part, no ritual. All I will do is just sit and meditate and observe the breathing. That is only one part, Baba, and let people follow that, those who want to, but there is no need to condemn the others who are following other paths. I know so many people who are absolutely confused, and they come to us, and many of them are our own study group members also. They will go attend some course where it will be heavily conditioned in them that Murti Puja should not be done, idol should not be there, ritual should not be done. Just observe what is and focus on the breathing. No problem if the mind is happy. Even Ramana Maharshi spoke about Prana Vikshana and Upadesh Sar, and there also he spoke about Eka Chintanam. It's a part of our culture, but if you say other parts are not, then these people get confused. Why? Because their emotion is not getting engaged. So the mind after some time starts wandering. Then they say how to increase concentration, how to stop wandering of the mind. Because you didn't purify earlier, you did not do upasanas earlier, and now the mind obviously wanders. Directly I want to jump into, what is it called, PhD level. How is it possible without going through the other steps? So Sagun Bhakti is very important. So I've explained to you the need for a form. The need for a form is emotions have to be anchored, surrender has to happen, individuality has to become thin, and the person finally does not limit the murti, because for the person there is no murti. for the person there is Bhagwan. Please remember, there is nothing called Murti Puja. There is only Bhagavat Puja through the Murti. When we salute a flag, are we saluting the cloth or are we saluting the nation? Think about it. So if we condemn, no, this is flag salute. Flag salute is terrible. The flag is just a piece of paper, or just piece of cloth. Why are you engaging in this flag salute? Remove all flag salutes from all Independence Day and Republic Day and all places. Have we gone mad? Really? Because flag salute is not a salute to that flag. It is salute to the nation through the flag. That's why Gurudev always used to say, Hindus are not idol worshippers. They are worshipping the ideal behind the idol. So we are ideal worshippers. And to worship the ideal, we need a form. As simple as that. And it's amazing to see advertising can use the same principle and we will accept. But spirituality can't use the same principle and we will not accept that. Think about advertisement. What is advertisement doing? They are using a picture and a form and a what is that called? A slogan or not? How is it different from a devotee who uses the Nama and Rupa? Rupa is the picture, Nama is the slogan. How is it different? Every product is marketed using only picture and slogan. They call it brand value, brand recall. So it will be there everywhere. Suppose Nike, so there will be a tick mark. Now the moment you see that tick mark, you know that it's a Nike and their slogan is just do it. For the devotee, the moment the devotee sees Shivalinga, the devotee says, this is Lord Shiva, consciousness, surrender there straight. Where is that person worshipping stone? Person is worshipping Shiva, the Tattva. So we should have this clearly in our mind that for us, any form is representation of that infinite Brahman in this form, Sagun Sakar Roop. We are not doing Murti Puja, we are doing Bhagavat Puja through the Murti. And so the Bhavana is important. That what is my sambandh with that Bhagavan? Am I a devotee? He is the Lord. Am I a son? He is my father or mother. Am I a servant? He is my master. Am I a lover? He is my beloved. Any relationship one can build. Now, last part is why a specific ritual or puja is required. See, as I said, there are methods of upasana. Puja is one part. And our culture says from puja, which is physical external ritual, one goes to, from the sthula puja, one goes to sukshma puja, which is manasa puja. The entire puja is done in the mind. Now try doing the entire puja in the mind. Entire 16 steps of the puja, do it in the mind without any disturbance in the mind. Then we don't need physical puja. So from the sthula puja to manasik puja, from manasik puja to japa. When a person is ready to do entire manasik puja and is able to do that consistently, then that person goes to japa. Where a mantra is taken and one keeps repeating the name of the Lord and the form is kept in the mind and one knows that that form is infinite consciousness. And from that japa, one goes to dhyanam, where one drops the mantra, one drops the form, one uses the words as indicative pointers. So if I am doing Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya as japa, while doing japa, I will keep the form of Shiva in the mind and I will visualize that I am a devotee or whatever is my relationship, sitting in front of the Lord. I am repeating the name of the Lord, invoking love in my heart. So Nama and Rupa will be together. But in Dhyanam, what will I do? That is Nididhyasan, Nirgun Nirakar. There will be no form. I may still say Om Namah Shivaya, but for me, Om Namah Shivaya means salutations to that consciousness, which is Shiva. So the same mantra becomes Nididhyasana. So there are all the possibilities depending on one's temperament. Now, why a puja as a ritual specifically is required? First and foremost, it is a fantastic way to train all my senses to be in one place. Think about it, mind wanders because the senses are extroverted. How to train my senses? Through the day, my senses are going to look at all kinds of objects and people and things. And in that, do we have a choice? So many times we don't have a choice. What we see is because what is shown around us, what is printed, what we see around, in that we don't have a choice. We may take our, move away our mind's attention from that. That choice only we have. But what is thrown at us, we don't have a choice in that. So when I sit for a puja, all my 10 senses, I train them to remain focused. Because to close the eyes and visualize a form where the senses are withdrawn is not easy, because senses by themselves are extrovert. So they will want to go and experience things outside. That's why we can't sit many times, in concentration for a long time in Upasana. Our eyes open. People are not even able to do Shavasana. Can you believe that? Many people cannot do Shavasana because they feel suffocated when eyes are closed and they can't fall, they can't go into a state of relaxation. So slowly one has to train them because the senses are not ready, the mind is not ready. So when I sit in a puja, eyes will see the form, nose will smell the agarbatti, the flowers, the tongue will chant the name of the Lord. At the end of it, one will eat the prasad. The hands will offer flowers to the Lord, do the arati of the Lord. Ears will listen to the chanting of the Lord. The legs are folded. One doesn't do anything. So the movement is arrested. Hands are being engaged. All the senses get trained to be in one place. And when repeatedly I take a form inside through the senses, it makes a deep impression in the mind. Then I can do Manasa Puja. Then I can concentrate on Japa also. So first point is it trains the senses. Second point is Puja helps me to strengthen my bond with Bhagwan. What is my bhav? What is my relationship? When we love someone, don't we want to express that love? We think puja is a mechanical ritual and we have to just do Om Keshwaya Swaha, Narayana Swaha, Madhavaya Swaha, Om Govindaya Namaha, Om Achyutaya Namaha, Anantaya Namaha, Govindaya Namaha. Arey, it is not at all a mechanical ritual. The devotee loves it. That here is my Bhagwan who is sitting and I am offering all this. See the bhavna that they have. It is that bhavna which elevates the mind away from the jiva bhav to thinking of Ishvara alone. So my bond with Bhagwan is strengthened, which means my jiva bhav becomes lesser. Third point, whole day don't we think what did I get, how did I benefit? When I do a puja, I am thinking what the Lord loves, how can I give Lord what he likes. So if I am worshipping Shivji, I will get bhasma, I will get bilva patra, then I will make mala out of that bilva patra and I will offer it. Whatever Bhagwan loves. So my focus is not on I, my focus is on what does Bhagwan want. Because lover wants to make the beloved happy. That's the beauty of puja. Fourth, puja transforms the so-called Jada Vastu into Chaitanya. Show me one technique which does that. The murti or the photograph is an inert thing, but in the mind of the devotee, it is sentient. Bhagwan is there. You may say, oh, this is all madness. That whoever wants to say that, let them say, because what they are doing also is equally mad. Where they think this form is real and everything that this form has to go through is real, but Bhagwan's form is not real. Look at some of these devotees, these people who do this upasana in terms of Pushti Marg. Morning to evening, everything that we do for ourselves, we will do it for Bhagwan. Because for us, Bhagwan is not a murti. For us, Bhagwan is a living entity. So when they have that process they follow, so they will wake up Bhagwan also, and they will give him bath, they will give him clothes, then there is breakfast, and then there is certain other things they do in the day, then lunch is given, then he is made to go to sleep in the afternoon, and again in the evening he wakes up, and then one sings. There are people who have different types of clothes for Bhagwan for different seasons, different types of bhajans for different months. That tradition of bhakti is very rich in our country. And don't think all this is some humbug or this is some useless, meaningless thing. Do it, then you understand the benefit, that how much the mind revels in thinking of Bhagwan. The devotee finds joy. This is called Ananya Bhakti. Puja helps to develop Ananya Bhakti. Full day I can think about Bhagwan. That's the meaning of puja. Puja is not some ritual meant for only half an hour, 1 hour. That is an initiation in that 1 hour of the bhav, because puja means that in which I worship the one who is most worshipful. The worshipful attitude is called puja. Pujyate anaya iti puja. That's the meaning. That by which the worshipful is worshipped is puja. Then my whole action becomes, everyday action through the day becomes a puja. Jagat Ishadhi Yukta Sevanam Ashtamurti Bhrit Deva Pujanam. Ramana Maharshi said that. So the puja bhav extends to the entire world and through all my actions. So puja helps to inculcate this bhav, Ananya Bhakti. Puja transforms the inert into sentient through bhavana. Puja is also that which helps me to express gratitude towards Bhagwan, that so many things he has given to me. Can I give little bit to him? We may say, oh, I can express gratitude through gratitude journal and gratitude jar and gratitude stone, and okay, do it, no problem. But don't we feel that everything Bhagwan has given, what can I give to Bhagwan? I can give my love to Bhagwan, and one way to express my love is through this. So it helps to express gratitude, it helps to express love. And is it not that a child, see, when a child is very small, the child wants to give a gift to the parent on the parent's birthday, the child will ask money to the parent only. And the child says, Mummy, can I have 20 rupees? And then the child goes and buys some nice chocolate or something, and then comes and gift wraps it, and then gives it, saying, happy birthday. Does the mother feel happy or not? My child got this for me. Mother doesn't say, अरे मेरा ही पैसे से मुझे ही chocolate क्या दे रहा है ये? Mother doesn't say that. Mother is so happy that, अरे my child brought this for me. So when we say Tera Tujhko Arpan Kya Lage Mera, everything is Bhagwan's only. Using everything that Bhagwan has created, I offer little bit of that to Bhagwan, saying, Bhagwan, this is for you. Because through that I'm offering my bhakti. That's why Bhagwan says, I don't need elaborate things. Patram pushpam phalam toyam yome bhaktya prayachati. Offer me a leaf, a drop of water, offer a fruit, whatever you want to offer. Tadaham bhakti upahritam ashnami prayatatmanaha. I take the bhakti of that person. Like Gurudev used to say, we take the spoon and we eat the food, and the food is left in the mouth, the spoon comes back. It is like that. So these are various reasons why puja is done. It trains the senses, it invokes love, it improves our concentration, it increases the bhavana for Bhagwan, it helps in inculcating Ananya Bhav. And do you know, a puja also connects me to the entire universe. Why? Because if you see the sankalpa in the puja, it will come from the cosmic galaxies up to the place where I am sitting. It will make me so aware that I am one insignificant thing in this huge cosmic creation. शुभे शोभने मुहूर्ते अद्य ब्रह्मणः द्वितीय परादे श्वेतवाराः कल्पे वैवस्वत मन्वन्तरे कलियुगे प्रथम पादे भारतवर्षे जम्बूद्वीपे भारतवर्षे भरतखंडे मेरोः दक्षिणे पार्श्वे. It will connect you right from the time of Brahma ji and from the entire creation to the place we are right now, and it will make me conscious of what I really want. So it will connect me to the whole universe. And in the not only in Sankalpa, even through the puja, in the Sankalpa itself, we say it is for me, for the family, for the Yajman, for everybody. And in the puja at the end also we say Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, Sarve Santu Niramayaha. So we pray for the well-being of all. One more point. When we take the Sankalpa, puja increases the Sankalpa Shakti in a person. The capability of desiring something consistently and sticking to that and achieving that, which today people call the law of attraction. What you think about, you bring about. Very good. Law of attraction we believe in, the secret we will believe in, but puja sankalpa we will not believe in. Think about all these. Every day when we say that, oh Bhagavan, bless me with this, whatever it may be, spiritual, jnana, bhakti, vairagya, siddhyartham, vidya, vinaya, praptyartham, आयुर आरोग्य ऐश्वर्य अभिवृद्ध्यर्थम समस्त सन्मंगल अवाप्त्यर्थम समस्त दुरित उपशांत्यर्थम श्री सद्गुरु प्रसाद सिद्ध्यर्थम च. One has to invoke all these thoughts in the mind that I am blessed by all these and all my family members are blessed by that, the whole world is blessed by that. Tremendous power of sankalpa it is. And when a person continuously does that every day, one is strengthening that positive resolve so much that that mind will be able to achieve anything that it wants. So Sankalpa helps us to do that. And also there are so many therapies connected in that puja, which today people are talking about. Aromatherapy, that agarbatti is supposed to be aromatherapy. That Panchamrit is supposed to be very high calorie in some, I forget, in calcium and so many other things. Each of that has a lot of significance. Camphor. Camphor is that which brings oxygen very close to itself. Oxygen concentration increases in the place where there is camphor. So many people, when they go for trekking, etc., they will take camphor with them and they will tie it on their wrist and they'll keep smelling it. Because near camphor, it will, where oxygen especially is less, it will gather more oxygen nearby, so one can take in more oxygen. Many such things are there. Do you know the water that one uses in the puja? That water gets charged by the power of the mantras, and that water, when it is drunk, it has a great benefit for the body as well as for the mind. And do you know that even some people on whom whose minds are weak and on whom there are certain negative influences of some black magic or some ghost or anything, if that person is made to drink this water, all those negative influences go away very soon. Lots of power is there in puja, in these rituals. So we should not undermine them at all. All that we should try to do is remember that I am worshipping that Supreme out there who is consciousness alone. And the best part of puja is the consciousness that I am not able to experience within me. Let me invoke outside. That is called avahanam. So from our own heart, we invoke the Lord in the murti or the puja or the photograph, and we worship the Lord. And then we repose the Lord back into our heart. So what is the understanding of a Vedantic student there? The consciousness in me, I am not able to experience at this moment. I am worshipping that consciousness outside. All these are benefits of puja. So that's why it has a great impact. Merely to connect to sound or to connect to absolute formless is not very easy. Those who are able to do it definitely can do. Our culture never imposes anything saying everybody has to do puja. Each one has their temperament. But we should not reject something just because of some wrong notions that we have or some wrong ideas that people have put into our head. So that's where I will stop. If you want to ask, share anything, you are welcome. You have to raise your hand if you want to ask anything. Then I can unmute, and you can ask. Okay, no questions. Fine. So go ahead, Reena ji.
Thank you so much, Swamiji. It was indeed a most delightful and most enlightening talk. I now invite Seemaji Mittal from Vinita ji's class to give Swamiji the vote of thanks on behalf of all of us.
On behalf of all the classes present here and the respective Sevikas, Swamiji, I sincerely thank you for the valuable insights you have given us today on Sagun Bhakti and also for clearing all our doubts regarding the same. I'm sure this will help to deepen our devotion with better understanding. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Seemaji. And now, let us all come together as proud members of the Chinma Mission family and pledge to live our life by the values that our mission stands for. So I request everyone now to please put on your video cameras, place your right hand on your hearts, shut your eyes as we take the pledge that will be led by Aisha Kumar and Anaita Modi, both from Aditi ji's class. Aditi ji, please unmute them.
We stand as one family, bound to each other with love and respect. We serve as an army, courageous and disciplined, ever ready to fight against all low tendencies and false values within and without us. We live honestly the noble life of sacrifice and service, producing more than what we consume and giving more than what we take. We seek the Lord's grace to keep us on the path of virtue, courage, and wisdom.
You have to unmute the next person.
Aditi ji, please unmute Anaita Modi. I've asked.
May thy grace and blessings flow through us to the world around us. We believe that the service of our country is the service of the Lord of Lords, and devotion to the people is the devotion to the Supreme Self. We know our responsibilities, give us the ability and courage to fulfill them. Om Tat Sat. Hari Om.
Thank you so much. And now we will pay obeisance to our Sadguru, Pujya Gurudev, Swami Chinmayanand ji, with the Chinmay Aarti, which will be sung by Vibhaji Mittal and myself, Reena Rajpal, and we both are from Vinita Ji's class. Aditi ji, please unmute Vibhaji.
आरती श्री चिन्मय सद्गुरु की, दिव्य रूप मूर्ति करुणा की, आरती सद्गुरु की। चरणों में उनके शांति समाए, शरणागत की भ्रांति मिटाए, पाप ताप संताप हरण की, आरती श्री चिन्मय सद्गुरु की, आरती सद्गुरु की।
वेद उपनिषद गीता को गाया, धर्म सनातन फिर से जगाया, शुद्ध नीति प्रीति शंकर की, आरती श्री चिन्मय सद्गुरु की, आरती सद्गुरु की। सिद्ध बाड़ी की तपोभूमि में नित्य विराजे गुरु हमारे, भक्त हृदय आनंद स्रोत की, आरती श्री चिन्मय सद्गुरु की, आरती सद्गुरु की, आरती सद्गुरु की। बोलिए श्री सद्गुरुनाथ महाराज की जय। Thank you so much. And now, as we come to the concluding section of this program, I would like to once again thank Pujya Swami Ji for guiding us on the path, and of course, our wonderful Sevikas, Vinita Ji and Aditi Ji, for keeping us grounded and on the path. I now request Diggy Ji and Engineer and Sneh Ji Todi to please unmute and recite the concluding prayers.
ॐ सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः, सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः, सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु, मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्। ॐ असतो मा सद्गमय, तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय, मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय।
ॐ पूर्णमद पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते, पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। हरि ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। हरि ओम।
Hari Om. Thank you, everyone.
Pranam Swamiji.
Hari Om.